As much as I wanted to use the materials that I had to build the rack, I did not have any 6 metre lengths of 100 by 50, or 4 by 2 in the old money, or 2 by 4 if you live in other parts of the world. I needed these for the rails to run the full length of the wood rack. I only need about 5 metres for the rails in the wood rack, but I need 6 metres for the ones that will support the rafters. As I realised as things develop that it would be good to have a reasonable overhang at the northern end to shade the timber rack so that the sun can't come in onto the timber. This morning I went to the timber merchant and bought what I think I will need, and I've made a start. As I said previously, the design of this structure is very much being made up as I go along. Some design elements have already changed, and I'm sure there will be more changes as we go along. You may be wondering what I'm measuring down to when I was fixing the top rail. There is a laser level at this end on the tripod next to the meter box. It is positioned so that it is throwing a beam on the inside of both sets of posts. It was a bit faint by the time it got to the far posts, but if I shaded the post with my hand I could still see it. After a period of contemplation, I confirmed to myself that I would be able to reuse the rafters and purlins that came from the old playhouse that I'd pulled down when I moved the metal shed. I clamped the first rafter to the shortest outer post, with the other end resting on the top rail. Because this roof angle is a lot less than the playhouse was, both the bird's mouth cuts in the rafters that sat on the top plate of the playhouse and the cut angles at the ends of the rafters are completely wrong for this situation. I wanted the outside height of the rack to be as high as it could be, so that when my neighbour comes down through here in the dark winter mornings to go for a run up the peak, there's no chance of him sconning his head on the rafters or the iron. As an aside, and considering head sconning, once I had the rafters sitting in place, and while I was working inside the rack, I did manage to smack my head on them a number of times. It was becoming quite tender by the end of the day, not helped by hitting it in the same place, on my head that is, more than once. Back to the rafters. In the end, it was best to put the old bird's mouth cuts on the top of the rafter, and also at the top end of the roof. The top purlin ended up straddling across it, so that worked out fine. To get the top end of the rafter cut angles correct, I simply lay them in place and then used my spirit level against the workshop and marked the board. It was easier than getting out the miter cut protractor at that point. I then just set the miter saw to the pencil line and cut all the boards at the same time. So I'm reasonably happy with progress this morning. Battery's about to run out, so we'll see where that goes. As you saw, you didn't, but I went out and bought some rough sawn 100 by 50 to use for these rails. It was just going to work better than trying to rip down 300 by 50 or something and cobble it together with some nail plates and things. So I've done that, got the top plate, I guess you want to call it, on both sides in, so now I can do the rafters and then the purlins and then the iron. And once I've done that, I can then work out where I'm going to put the different levels. Some levels won't go all the way through to the back because I want to be able to feed in short pieces at the back. on a crossways rather than lengthways. So all my pegs and all those kind of things all need a home as well. So they'll go down there, not on the bottom layer, but up one. Anyway, it's lunchtime and I need to go and replenish. See you later. I used a couple of pieces of the purlin size timber just to make sure that when the iron went on, it was going to tuck in under the downpipe at this end. It looked like it was going to work, but only just. I could have saved myself some grief further down the track if I had dropped the rails and rafters 10mm. The issue was that when I checked it, I had the rafter at this end against the post, but then later I decided to push that rafter out to the end of the rail, and hence it was fouling the downpipe, but only just. Before I cut the end of these rafters, off camera I had gone through and marked the rafter at each end and run the chalk line across the top of the rafters. I then marked down from that. As I don't intend to put guttering on the rack, I decided to cut the rafters square rather than plumb. As I think about it more, and with the aid of hindsight, I probably should have cut them plumb. It would have looked better, and who knows, someone who comes after me may want to put gutter on it. We are in a new day now, but I didn't record an end of the day or a new day intro, so you just transitioned through a time warp without knowing it. You will see as this series of videos progresses that my plans keep changing as I build the timber rack. Certain things become apparent as you go along, and that's what happened here. Once I had the purlins in place, I realised it was going to be much easier to install the cross members before I put the roof on, so that is what is happening here. As I will explain later, I used some of the recently purchased 100x50 for the cross members, as then all of them are of a consistent size, which meant I could set the height of all the supporting blocks using the laser. If I had used timber of varying sizes for the cross members, I would have had to vary where the blocks were set, and that just would have made it harder to have each cross member level with the others on that level. I had the timber, so why not use it and make my life a bit less complicated. A quick summary of the morning. You will have seen the time-lapse before we get to this bit. Anyway, so what I have done this morning is put in the support rails for everything that's going to go in here. So what I have done, and the reason I've done it, is as follows. So I've put a block on each post with 2 screws in it. On the round posts, I needed to put them one above the other. And the reason for that is because if I just relied on the screw in here, if the weight got too much, then the board could just split apart, and so that's why I've got it sitting on this in each case. And so cut all of those, put them in, and then cut all the rails. I used the new material that I got a couple of days ago, because they obviously all need to be the same height here, otherwise there wasn't any point in making these all the same height. That has all happened, and those are now in place. I wanted to do those before I put the iron on the roof, just because it meant there was more light in there for me to see what I was doing, and less chance of me banging my head on it. So that's where I'm up to at this point. So the next step is I'm going to move all of this stuff here, I'm going to move all of that into the timber rack, because then I can more safely work down here for putting the roof on. That probably won't be today because I have other things to do this afternoon, but that's okay, that's fine, I can come back to it tomorrow. Hopefully tomorrow I can have all of that moved and have the iron on the roof. I need to check that I have enough screws to put that iron on with. I will need to get some rust curl material to put on the iron, because some of it is quite rusty, and so I will give it a good going over with the rust curl, and it's the kind of stuff that then creates a seal on the iron so that it can't rust again. Hopefully one day I will actually paint it, but the rust curl will be sufficient for a while, and it may be that the roof of this gets painted when the roof of the workshop is painted. That's the most likely scenario. After I've done that stuff, then I need to build a couple of shelves down these far end ones down here that will take all the pegs and things like that and other short bits of timber that I have that wouldn't span the 1200 between these existing support rails. So that's it for today probably. I will come back to you when we make some more progress another day. Bye for now.